put morals over money. Put your morals over money.
That we will uphold against anyone that stands against us.
Hello and welcome to the Truth Trumpet. I am Beth.
And I'm Stephen.
We're so glad you could join us this evening. Tonight we have a great guest in store for you, and I am going to bring him in right now. Hi, Derek.
Hi, Beth. Hi, Steve.
Hello. So today we have Derek Sloan, leader of the Ontario Party, here with us today. Why don't you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about you?
Sure. So my name's Derek Sloan. I'm the current leader of the Ontario Party and a former member of Parliament, former leadership candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada, and various other things as well. Married, have 3 children. I'm a lawyer by education and by trade, and I've been in politics, well, depending on how you count, about 7 years now.
Wow, 7 years. Impressive. So maybe you could kind of tell us a little about how you got into politics.
Sure. So I was actually in law school at the time when I first started to get interested in politics. I was always, you could say, a small c conservative in the sense of, not really being into any particular party or policies, but just being, irritated by high taxes, irritated by government, overreach, irritated by waste, this kind of thing. But really, starting from, I would say, the time that I went to law school. So I didn't go to law school directly after I graduated from undergraduate. I was actually out in the real world for 6.5 years. And when I went to law school, I realized that things had changed a lot in that time period. That was during the time period where we kind of went from everyone was allowed to have their own opinion to, attacking people that had different opinions. And things were starting to get really polarized. And I realized that the students in my law school, they didn't really have, the same understanding of free speech as I did. They had the same sort of mentality. If somebody has, bad beliefs, they need to be silenced. They need to be shut down. And I thought, wow, this is really frightening, because these people are going to be the people that are on our benches as judges in, 20 years from now. So I thought, if these people are so interested in politics, I better get interested in politics, because they're, kind of coming for me. Anybody who doesn't believe in all this kind of woke stuff that was, even happening back then, is kind of on the naughty list. And so, I wasn't super ideological per se, but I definitely had a strong sense that people have the right to have their own opinion. A lot of these, new ideas are, basically kind of nonsense, but certainly you shouldn't be punished for not believing them. And so I started to get involved in politics over the course of a couple of years at law school, in the sense of just kind of being interested in those, joining some clubs. And when I graduated from law school, I was articling in Kingston, Ontario. I ended up moving to where I live now. And there was a conservative nomination, meaning the riding was looking for a candidate. And I thought, you know what? Why don't I put in my name in the hat, or my name in the race there? And at that point, I was thinking, listen, I just kind of got out of school. I have, a family and all that. So if I get hired back after articling, so articling is kind of like an apprenticeship period where you're working as a lawyer, but under the supervision of like a senior lawyer. And I said, if I get hired back on at this firm, I'm going to stay and not do politics, because obviously, I'd rather have a paycheck, and politics is brand new to me. It's an interest, but I don't want to, risk everything just on this new, plan. So I kind of made a deal with God, with myself, that if I didn't get hired back, I would take that as a sign to kind of dive into this nomination, because I'd have, a bit of time in my hands. But if I did get hired back, then I wouldn't do the politics. So within a couple of weeks of that kind of deal, I got called into my supervisor's office, and he said, and this was months before the end of the term. So usually they don't really give you months notice. They kind of wait to the end. But he said, listen, we wanted to give you the heads up. We like your work. You've been doing a good job, but just with the economic situation, we don't see a fit for you in the firm after articling. So we wanted to let you know early so you could, make arrangements. And so I was actually pretty happy to get, some clarity on the issue. And I dove into the nomination race, and I was going up against a bunch of other people who were, a lot more well-known than me. I had recently moved into the area. I didn't have, a lot of contacts or a lot of money to put into this. And so, a lot of these other more important people who'd been around for a lot longer spent more money, knew a lot more people. And, when it came to the nomination, I just kind of, spoke my heart on the issues facing the country, and it really resonated with people at that meeting. And so they nominated me, and I won very handily, even though I was, an unknown person. And I was able to win the election as an MP. And then I ended up running for leadership of the Conservative Party, which allowed me to travel across the country. And, I was pretty consistent with some controversial things, one of which was firing Dr. Theresa Tam, which was turned into an accusation of racism. And then the Conservative Party tried to kick me out, and various other things, which eventually, after about a year or so, culminated in the Conservatives kicking me out under the leadership of Aaron O'Toole. And then I remained as an independent for another year. And then I lost re-election. I actually tried to run in Alberta. We just thought it would be kind of an interesting, zig when they think you're going to zag kind of thing. And we had more support out there, but that didn't pan out the way we had hoped. And after that, I came and took over leadership of the Ontario Party. We ran almost a full slate of candidates in the 2022 election. We got 85,000 votes, and we're going to hopefully double that this next election.
Yes.
Wow, that's an amazing journey.
Yes, it's a lot of details packed into one there, but certainly an exciting time.
Let's unpack a little bit of that. You had mentioned while you were finishing up at the firm that you were having a conversation with God and kind of trying to seek out what your purpose would be. I'm not sure personally the landscape of the Conservative Party back then at that point, as I wasn't paying too much attention to the politics in Canada at the time. I was more focused on America because it was just more exciting, and it seemed like we kind of piggybacked off of the policies they implemented. But when having conversations, like you mentioned God, and you're a Christian, that's correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So you're kind of having this conversation with God, and then you move towards the Conservative Party. Do you see a difference today as opposed to when you got in or first started running with the Conservatives to their stance on Christianity or the one true God?
Well, the Conservative Party has always attracted Christians to it. They're by no means the only people that are in that party, but there's a lot of socially conservative Christians that are in the Conservative Party. There's a lot of members of Parliament that adopt those views, but unfortunately, the party is not really willing to do much on that publicly. They're okay to have people. They're glad to receive your vote. They're glad to receive your volunteering. They're glad to receive your donations, but don't expect them to do much legislatively. We had a majority under Harper where not much was done on the social conservative issues. So, the party has never been really a true standard bearer for those issues, although there are, many Christians in the party. But certainly we're coming to a time now where, those issues are becoming more polarizing, and the party, to one degree or another, is following the sort of trend in the world, which is like, shut those people out. Now, the party, of course, is not nearly as bad as, say, the Liberal Party or the other parties, where it's basically impossible to be a Christian in those parties, like seriously. But it's really not the best. And as of right now, I wouldn't feel comfortable recommending that party to a true Christian. And that's my opinion as of right now, even though there are, real Christians in that party.
I would agree with that statement. I'm just curious, Derek, were you surprised, were you disheartened by the fact that when you joined the Conservative Party, there was such a disconnect from what I would argue are core conservative values, Christian values, as opposed to the way they went about, for example, C4?
Well, listen, I truly believed that people like me could make a difference in that party, and there was other people like myself trying to do the same thing. And I would have been happy to continue pushing to make a difference in that party, but they showed me the door. So I think that makes it clear sort of what values they have, and they're incompatible with the values that I have. And so that sort of made the choice for me, but I would have still been in there today looking to make a difference if that hadn't happened.
Yeah. Well, I think we all have our plans. God has his plans, which are ultimately what will get put in place. But the Conservatives have their plans, and they expunged you. There were probably a few others. The reason why I got into the Ontario Party myself was because of what you and Rick Nichols, both of you, what you displayed publicly for other people to see that there is a beacon out there of folks who will stand on their principles or value system, even if it means potentially having issues of their own livelihood put at stake. So it was refreshing to see something in politics, and that's just to let you know that's what allowed me to kind of even view or have a gaze back at the political system, that there might be hope within the political system here in Canada. Having said that, there's the federal elections, I guess, that'll be coming up next generally, and you have Christians, like we were just talking about, who are currently trying to run or trying to become nominees within the Conservative Party. Do you have any advice, or what opinion do you have on, and there's some people who were also candidates within the Ontario Party who are trying again their hat to make headway as a Christian in the Conservative Party. Do you have any words of advice or anything you'd like to say to those folks who are doing that right now?
Yeah, I think that, obviously each situation is its own situation, and you need to, whatever you're doing, you need to think carefully and prayerfully about it. So, I don't think I would say never, try to do that. I would say that, myself, I thought that I would be able to have an unbridled voice in the party, even though I didn't expect the entire party to be on the same wavelength. I thought that I would have that voice, but politics, especially at that level, unfortunately, is considered a team sport. So it's kind of like, this is the party's line. You're expected to go with it, and you're not, there is some latitude, but you're expected to basically vote along party lines most of the time. And you're expected to not cause too much of a fuss for the party as a whole. So I would say you're probably going to be limited in your voice and your witness in that situation. And you'd be better off probably being in a situation where you're not going to be muzzled to one degree or another.
That's pretty sound advice, I would say.
Yep.
So let's shift gears a little bit, Derek, and talk about the Ontario Party. How did you get involved in the Ontario Party? Anything you'd like to tell our audience to give them a better view of what the Ontario Party is all about?
Sure. So the Ontario Party is actually, its tagline is faith, family, and freedom, which is similar to the tagline of the show. Those are the three core pillars that you have to have to change this country. And so, my issue with the Conservative Party before, and I said this over and over again, you can't just be fiscally conservative. A lot of the issues we're dealing with right now are social issues. Most of the bills that came up when I was a member of Parliament were social issues, whether it was, having to do with the rights of Indigenous people, whether it had to do, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, assisted suicide, conversion therapy, all of these kind of things. Racism in regards to jail sentencing. Like there was always some kind of identity politics or like social issue dimension to many of the bills that were there. So you need to have a conservative answer. You need to have an answer for all of those issues. You can't just be, a one-trick pony. So, without faith, family, and freedom as the bedrock of our nation, we won't be able to fix things. And so that's why we chose that. And that's why our policies reflect that. Stephen, are you able to pull up our website quickly just to look at the front page there or not?
Yeah, we can do that right now. Just give us 1 second and we'll pull it up. Here we go.
There you go. So here's our page there. And you can see we have quite a lengthy platform. If you go to the very top, there's links there that if you go to our platform, you can read all about it. You can click on the different topics there. But we have the most intricate platform of a conservative party, I believe, and we got a lot of people who really like what we stand for, and we're about protecting faith, family, and freedom, getting indoctrination out of the school system, having realistic plans to deal with healthcare, education, the environment, housing, all of these things. So, that's the great thing about the Ontario Party is, we could start from scratch. We don't have to just toe the party line. We don't have to do what Doug Ford says. We don't have to do what, Pierre Poilievre says. We can do what we think is the best. And frankly, our platform is the best. A lot of these parties just do what they think they can do, right? Like, so a lot of conservative MPs would probably agree with many of the things that we're fighting for. But if they don't think they can kind of sell it to the public or get away with it, then they just kind of do what they can. But I believe, a party needs to have put its best foot forward, right? Put the best platform forward. Don't, just do a mediocre one.
Absolutely. And what I, again, love about the Ontario Party is we just saw a quick glimpse of the page layout, and there's so many dimensions and answers and definitions and explanations of exactly not just policy, but where you can get a glimpse of where our hearts line up when it comes to these policies. And it doesn't leave too many questions to be answered. So when you look at whether it's a conservative, liberal, or NDP, if they have details, which a lot of the times they don't have great detail up on their platform, it's just kind of a amalgamation of paragraphs that sound nice and have an end cap point that make you go, well, I think that covered all the topics, but you're not left feeling good. And the problem with, I think, a lot of people in society in general is we're given so many distractions. We have this goldfish memory that we're waiting to be fed the information or regurgitated through some social media form. And as you know, if you go against the grain, you get censored, demonetized. Your voice or the platform doesn't get pushed through these social media platforms like the other ones do. But if people would just go to the website and take a look at these policies, it's difficult. I can't imagine any conservative person disagreeing with what's on the platform in whole. And especially if you're a Christian, I can't see how you could disagree. And if you do, you should close the platform and revisit the Bible and then open the platform again and go over it. But it's something that seems to cover almost all topics, economic and social, but it amalgamates them, because really you can't eliminate your faith, or you can't eliminate the social aspect and still talk about the fiscal policies. Everything is combined. How we behave, how we're raised, our value system is built into these policies that get put out there. And same thing with conservatives and liberals. That's why it's so telling to who you are, who we are as individuals, by the policies you either tricked into or fully agree with. these are ones that, Pierre talks about common sense policies. It doesn't get more common sense than the policies you see on the Ontario Party platform.
Yeah.
Derek, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to your party's stance on unelected letter organizations who feel the need to interfere with Canadian citizens.
Yeah, so we don't like them. I mean, I've been very clear on the status of, the UN, the World Health Organization, all of these groups, which again are trying to create situations where countries sort of sign away their sovereignty, like where they preemptively say, yep, we're going to do whatever the World Health Organization says the next time a pandemic comes. Very troubling. Of course, we have the sort of awful example of the information that was coming out of the World Health Organization where they, were deliberately covering up for China and saying, oh no, nothing's going on here. Everything's fine. Right at the beginning of COVID when, it was spreading all over the world. So we don't, there's a lot of politics at play in these organizations. The World Health Organization doesn't even recognize Taiwan, I believe, as a separate country. There's just a lot of weird political things that have nothing to do with health, but that's what happens. And, I don't think we should be spending too much time with these organizations. We need to worry about our own country.
I think we're all in agreement about that. So for you, Derek, is there a specific point on your platform that really you'd like to drive home with our audience? Something that you feel maybe is overlooked in a lot of the other political parties?
Well, the one thing that we were basically one of the only parties to be talking about at all in 2022. Now it's amazing how quickly things change, but immigration and housing. And at that time, it was, weird to bring up immigration. It was like, okay, I guess it has a connection to housing, but like, why are you, do you really have to be racist about it? And now all of a sudden everybody is admitting, the national, the major banks are putting out, advisories saying, that they think the immigration rates are too high and things like this. So, they've caught up to where we were at. But one of the things that people don't realize is that immigration constitutionally is a shared federal and provincial sort of sphere of authority. So, a lot of people think it's just the federal government, but no, this is something that the provinces have a say in too. And Quebec, of course, has exercised that in the past. So we're saying, listen, it's our province. We want to have a say over the people that are coming in, and we can't handle. And frankly, in Ontario, we get the brunt of the literally millions of people that are coming in different forms, students, permanent residents, non-permanent residents, temporary foreign workers. And we would like a say in them. And now everybody, even the Liberals, are recognizing that they've been letting in way too many people. And they're starting to put a bit of a clamp on it. But of course, not nearly as much as is needed. And frankly, with the housing and healthcare supply that we have, we don't need to be bringing in millions of people every year. I mean, our population has grown by a few million in the last couple of years, and it's just unsustainable.
I think those are great points.
Yeah, it floors me. I'm not exactly sure. I mentioned the goldfish memory of the average person because the distractions that we're all given, but I don't understand exactly where it comes from, how all of these issues are so clear now. I mean, they were clear to us maybe a little bit sooner, to people that were paying attention to these policies that were bringing in a lot more, not just immigration, but migration as well. But it floors me that there's so many people out there that just want to toe the false virtuous platform line of let whoever in. They're hurting. They must be hurting. They're from somewhere else. They have a title as refugee or migrant. Therefore, they fit in to this category. Don't ask any questions. They're the poor old lady that needs help, or the young girl without a mother that needs a country and place to come. But there's obviously, in my mind, so much more. You know, there's also fighting age men. There's also people taking advantage of NGOs and pipelines coming in. There's all these real factors that are there, or else how would they get here in such mass amounts? But people generally don't see that. They just kind of say, we have to help. We have to help. Forget about all the issues we have here in Canada where we're failing right now, Canadians, but they just want to, it seems like, hop on that virtuous platform without a thought. Do you have any thoughts on why there's so many people that don't see what's happening?
Well, a lot of people don't put much thought into it one way or the other. And so they don't really understand the sheer quantity of immigrants that are coming in. They don't understand, its impact on society. And part of that is, of course, Canadians do need to wake up and pay a little bit more attention. Our politicians need to stop being, frankly, idiots. I mean, anybody could have seen this coming. I've been talking about it ever since I got elected. One of my planks in my leadership platform 4 years ago was immigration and how it was too high. And that was before, Trudeau just went crazy with it. So there's a lot of information that's not out there. Our media needs to do a better job of that. And they're primed to, always take the side of sort of the downtrodden, unless it's the COVID downtrodden. But, they're kind of primed to take a certain political side to things. And that's a problem too.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
So you are running, you ran for provincial office. I was wondering if you could give us your take on how you think the progressive Conservatives in Ontario are doing as far as their leadership.
About the best you can say. And I think this is fair. I am their opponent, but, out of a sense of fairness, the best you can say is it could be worse. And I think that's fair.
Yeah, it could be worse, sure.
And I say that in fairness. I mean, even still, the Liberals might argue with me. I mean, they are spending more than Kathleen Wynne did. Now, I mean, it's a different time and a different whatever. But probably if a Liberal was in, there'd be a lot. There'd be more. It'd be that much worse from a debt perspective. There'd be that much more sort of catering to the unions and the other special interests. But they really haven't stood strong on anything. I mean, like, really all you can say is, well, it would probably be worse under a Liberal or NDP government. But you can't really point to anything that's all that positive. They haven't really stood strong on the education file. I mean, they said they were going to scrap the sex ed. They went back on that. The education minister has made a comment or two, kind of touching on the issues of, like, not wanting, indoctrination in the classrooms and stuff. But, like, what have they actually done to stop that? You know what I mean? I mean, we're seeing rampant, bizarre ideologies taught our children all the time. They haven't done anything to stop it. They've delivered another deficit in their latest budget. They've been spending a lot of money. I mean, it's hard to point to something. They had that kerfuffle there with the green belt, which, frankly, they had to think about opening up more land given the amount of immigrants, right? But it's like, okay, we'll stand up and talk about immigration then. You know what I mean? So they haven't really done anything that you could write home about. Obviously, their performance during COVID-19 was awful. I believe they knew that what they were doing was wrong, but they just felt they, kind of had to do that because everyone was scared, and they did it anyway. So there's not much to say about them. I mean, they could be worse, but they could be a lot better.
Well, and that's kind of, I get how politicians in general have to tamper down some of the rhetoric and not seem too extreme in their opinion. But for mine, before running with the Ontario Party and currently, I can't help where my heart and mind and soul line up, and I have to express my opinion as how I feel it is the truth. I always felt, since I started putting my finger on the pulse of politics here, that within the big three, at least, there is a giant level of corruption, or collusion with corruption, or people that are coerced into corruption because of dirty deeds maybe in their life of the past, or they work too hard to get where they're at. Therefore, they have to comply with what's going on because you don't want to lose what you've built your whole life. All these kind of factors that play in. I do agree with your statement a few minutes ago that, you know, there was some idiotic choices made, or people within the parties that stop being idiots within the Conservatives. And I watched the movie Idiocracy years ago, but I can't fully endorse the fact that everybody, or there's a bunch of idiots, although I don't believe they're smartest, because once you have a power position, you start hiring, just like you would in a company. You'd hire people that are your buddies or were in your sorority. They might not be the best for the job. So there can be a level of idiocracy within there. But I truly believe that there's corruption intertwined within the leadership that trickles down. And there's so many people that don't want to lose the things they've amassed. So they go along, like with the COVID pandemic. Like you stated, there's so many obvious data points that they could have drawn from, or doctors that they knew were being silenced, but they made choices in order to keep their own career or elevate policy, or many other reasons other than just being dumb or blindly falling into these voting options. Do you think I'm far out there in that thought process, or do you think there are high levels of corruption that over the course of time have infiltrated the big three parties?
Yeah, I think there's corruption for sure. It's tough to say exactly what. I mean, probably the kinds of things that, I mean, listen, we know some of the things that have been going on based on what's been in the news lately, right? So we've seen these reports, both in global news and then also in this inquiry that's been going on recently, about the fact that there seems to be Chinese communist involvement in, you know, some in the elections there recently, and also in this nomination race in the Liberal Party. I mean, it seems that CSIS even tipped them off to the fact that things were going on. And there's a lot of things that allegedly have happened just recently in that Toronto by-election there. Toronto nomination race. So, you know, that is a fact. You know, we have this other thing going on in the House of Commons right now where that what is it? Is it ArriveCan? Yeah, ArriveCan or whatever. This company got several $1 million, and their company headquarters is like some, you know, 4x8 building out in the middle of nowhere, and they have like one employee or something. I mean, you know, this kind of thing's crazy. I mean, there's all kind. Now, I don't know if we don't know who exactly. Somebody seemingly committed fraud there, but you know, who knows if the Liberals even knew what was happening, right? But there's all kinds of things like that go on, and there's probably even worse things that we don't even know in the highest levels of these parties.
Absolutely. But even like the example you used, the education minister, Stephen Lecce, I think most people have seen that video where he was outside in public speaking and stating very common sensibly that the parents have the final say and policy should, you know, indicate that like it used to. But he's the education minister. He sees the policies that the boards have put in place already, and he could not just speak to the public what's conservative thinking, but he could have a say. He could actually change that, but instead we see what the board is doing and what they've done, and they're not shifting gears at all. In fact, they're trying to figure out ways to keep the public out of the meetings, and they're trying to shape the narrative in that way. To me, that is, I wouldn't say proof, but that's evidence of corruption or collusion, because how do you speak something that you know is truth to the public and you have the power to enact that truth, but you do nothing intentionally?
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. My question would be, okay, well, what came of that? You know, like, so he gave a nice speech there that was, you know, half decent, but did anything change? Did he come? I mean, I guess you could say he was signaling to the boards, but that's not the same thing as writing a ministerial letter basically telling them how it's going to be, or actually putting in place different policies. So that's an example of, again, something moderately positive but with no follow through.
That was one of the things I really liked about the Ontario Party's platform, was the idea of education vouchers. And I was hoping maybe you could explain to our audience a little bit what that exactly entails.
Well, we wanted to move our education system to a model where we were funding the student as opposed to a particular set of schools. And, in large part, that's because parents typically know best what the best education is for their kids. They're the most invested in their kids. They know their kids the best. So, going to the regular public school is not the best choice for every parent. And in fact, given the state of our public schools in many situations, it's not the best place for many children. So some parents may want to try a private school. So if their tax dollars are going towards that spot at school for their kid, why can't they have some of that money and use it in a way that they think is best for their kid? And the great thing about that is it opens up the school system to competition. One of the reasons why the schools are allowed to get away with what they're doing is that they have basically a carte blanche funding, right? Whatever, based on the number of kids and that kind of a thing, they have their budgets, they have their teachers. But if parents could actively decide where they were going to send their kids, we would see a whole new plethora of options open up, alternative sort of teaching arrangements, unique sort of private schools. There's already these kind of things in existence, but a lot of people can't afford them. Like there's schools where half the day you spend outside and you're learning, unique skills and stuff. And really the education model where you just sit and someone tells you something all day, that's not the best for a lot of kids. They need to, move, they need to have action. So the fact is in a situation with sort of competition open like that, all different varieties of educational options would sort of open up. Parents would feel the freedom financially to try many different things, maybe a private school, maybe a Christian school, maybe homeschooling, maybe one of these unique schools that does, like outdoor education and stuff like that. This is what we wanted to do. We wanted to give the money that's earmarked for education, basically a good chunk of it, to the parents and let them decide what to do with it.
I think that is a great idea. And I really wish that more of the political parties saw education just as you explained to us. Derek, we know you have another engagement, so we were wondering if you would like to give our audience any final thoughts for this evening.
Well, listen, right now we have 2 by-elections running in Ontario, in Milton and also in Lambton, Kent, Middlesex. And there are 2 candidates running for the Ontario Party, Cynthia Workman in Lambton, Kent, and Fred Weening in Milton. So if you live near or in those areas, reach out to the Ontario Party and help us in that election. And we're going to be looking forward to traveling across the province to meet you over the summer and the following year. We want to get ready for the 2026 election. Check out our website, check out our platform. Really good to be on this show tonight. Thank you so much, and God bless Canada.
Thank you so much, Derek, for all you're doing for our province and for our country. We really appreciate it.
And if you're willing, at some point in the near future, hopefully we can have a part 2, because there's so much more to expand on.
Really enjoyed being here with you tonight, Beth and Steve, and absolutely, let's do that again.
Thank you so much for joining the Truth Trumpet this evening. If you would like to get a hold of Steve or myself, you can email us at thetruethtrumpet@hotmail.com. We thank you for joining us this evening, and as always, God bless.
And you are loved.